What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. Mike, you're gonna talk about some spooky stuff.
Yeah, dude. A haunted fucking castle.
And from what I understand, like a haunted entire fucking area.
Yeah, a haunted city, we can say.
Whoa, okay.
Ooh. So I'm talking about Colchester in Essex, UK. And it's apparently the oldest town or city in Britain. And it was actually the first Roman capital. Originally, it was called Camalodunum. And due to the history of the area, like the entire area is kind of haunted. Like they've seen wars. There's been 2 civil wars that the city and the castle, Colchester Castle specifically, have been involved in. But the castle itself was actually built on the foundation of an old Roman temple that was dedicated to Claudius, who was the emperor of Rome in the early part of the 1st century AD. And after it was constructed, the warrior queen Boudica of the Celtic tribe, the Iceni, they attacked the city and they killed everyone in the city and burned the entire city to the ground.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, I'll just give a little brief backstory about the warrior queen.
Boudica's awesome. I try to convince my wife to name one of her daughters Boudica, and she's just like, no.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that'd be awesome. It's almost like a William Wallace from the Braveheart movie type of story, but her husband was a king, and he was considered to be an independent ally of Rome. But in his will, he said that he was leaving his kingdom to his daughters and the Roman emperor to rule jointly. Kind of like the same setup that he had currently, but with his daughters in his place. But as soon as he died, the will was ignored by the Roman Empire, and they took all of his property and his land, and they flogged Boudica publicly and raped his daughters. Roman soldiers raped his daughters, like just to spit in his, like just fucking vile shit. But as a result, obviously, Boudica was justifiably angry, and so she led the Iceni people as well as other British tribes to start a revolt against the Roman Empire in 60 AD. And this led to her killing everyone in the city of the capital, burning it down completely. And in addition to that, they sacked other cities and killed somewhere between 70 and 80,000 Romans during this uprising. Unfortunately, she was not successful, and she was defeated a year after her uprising began, and she died shortly afterward. And there's kind of some contention as to whether she committed suicide or if she contracted an illness that killed her. But that's just like the fucking start of the city, you know? Like that was that's what this city was founded on. So, I mean, how could it not be just based on that story alone, you know? How could it not be haunted?
There's going to be ghosts. Anything that's built on this land is going to experience that type of activity.
Right. Yeah. So, needless to say, the whole fucking city is haunted, and I wonder, is it because a lot of these places that are haunted don't have stories of like Roman ghosts or anything. You know, there's a few that do, but for the most part, the ghosts are unrelated to the Romans. Maybe those ghosts move on to replace other ghosts.
That's weird.
Yeah, right. Maybe it's one of those places that's like it's almost cursed, and the ground itself, the land itself, is just like a magnet for atrocities and tragedy, and maybe that's what pulls in the ghosts or keeps the ghosts there. But some of the ghosts that are reported here, it sounds like it's those like the stone tape theory sort of thing, where it's just like a recording frozen in time that continues on. And then there's other ones that seem like maybe there's something more involved there. But there's a place called the Red Lion Hotel that's there. And this one has a couple, I think it's got like, to me, it seems like it's got both kind of hauntings, like the intelligent haunting where it's interacting, and then also the replay in time sort of thing. The one that's frozen in time is the ghost of Alice Catherine Miller, and she is seen regularly in rooms 5, 6, 10, and also in the kitchen. And she's also seen walking through this hallway towards what would have been her bedroom back when she was alive and disappearing into the wall. But where this wall was originally was actually a door that would have went into her bedroom. But at some point in the 1800s, the owner he saw the ghost going into the room, and he thought if he bricked up the wall, that she wouldn't continue on the path, but she still continues on the path, and now rather than going into the door, she walks through the wall. But I mean, to me, that just seems like evidence that it's just a frozen recording in time, because like we've heard the ones where like the apparition will be walking upstairs that have been removed for decades, but they still walk up them as though they're walking up the stairs.
Yeah, just like your typical Unsolved Mysteries ghost.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. But there's another ghost there that it seems to be observed more by kids that are visiting the hotel, but it'll also show up in pictures when people are taking pictures there. He'll show up in the pictures, but it's this little kid who he hangs around this room in the hotel that's known as the Parliament Room, and he seems to be like kind of like acting like a shy kid who's trying to get other kids to play with him, and so he'll often appear to children and try to get them to play with him. And like I said, also he shows up in the photographs of people that are visiting. So he just seems like a lonely kid. But there was a fire there, and apparently there's another ghost that's linked to the fire. It's a ghost of a hooded monk, and it's said that he died in this fire trying to save children who were in the building. So maybe this kid was one of the kids he was trying to save, and they both perished in the fire. But the monk is also seen occasionally in the reception area, and also walking down one of the hallways. He just kind of walks, like he doesn't really interact with anybody or he's just kind of observed walking.
That's what I remember from watching all those Unsolved Mystery episodes, is when they had the cool ghost stories and they had the great reenactments. The ghost stories were cool alone, but the ones that like were super scary or interesting is when they would have a case of these stone tape type incidents where like it's a monk or somebody that's obviously from another time by their peril. The weird one stood out is when somehow or some way these ghosts would notice somebody there watching them. That's what stood out to me as weird ones.
Yeah, where there's acknowledgement there.
Yeah, and most of the time the ghost was just as shocked to be like being noticed.
Right. Yeah. Those stories are wild, man.
Yeah, that's where does that land?
Right. Yeah. Is that like a weird kind of like maybe bleed over between two realities?
Right. It might not have anything to do with ghosts at all.
But it just kind of appears that way because it's like a hazy thing just kind of phasing in. You're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Maybe to them you look like the ghost, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why they're surprised. Like, oh, what the fuck is this? But there's like, in this place, there's a bunch of different places you can stay, obviously. There's another hostel there. It's called Hostel of the Good Shepherd. This one, the haunting reportings are more recent. The earliest one dated back to the 1970s, but I guess people that are staying there hear ghostly footsteps, like weird shuffling noises, and random sounds coming from unoccupied rooms that are there. It's freaked people out. Like, no one has reported seeing anything, I guess. It's mostly just like these weird noises, but there was an exorcism that was performed on the building, but it didn't do anything to stop these sounds from happening. So who knows what that is?
Yeah, no kidding.
And then there's like haunted bars in the area. There's one called the Fox and the Fiddler, and this one is haunted by the ghost of a young serving girl named Sarah. And the legend has it that the Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins, who we've discussed on the show before, and he will be a main character in this episode. Well, I shouldn't say main character, but he's going to be a big part of the things we're going to talk in this episode. But this guy, major dick, but he was apparently responsible for this girl's death. He thought she was a witch and dragged her down into a underground tunnel underneath the pub and bricked her into the wall. I don't know why that would. To me, this seems more like a local legend than reality, but the guy was a complete dick and did some fucking heinous shit. So maybe it actually happened. But the story goes he bricked her up, and obviously she died in there. And now her spirit comes back and haunts this pub. She doesn't try to scare people or do anything like that. She plays like playful pranks on people. And when she shows up, when people that have reported seeing her, she's a short woman with blonde hair who wears a maid's uniform.
Huh.
Yeah. And there's also this restaurant called the Old Siege House. I guess it was actually a siege house way back when, but it's now converted into a restaurant. But there's one room here that's apparently so haunted that the staff refuse to go alone. They always will go in pairs or groups. And a lot of the hauntings seem to be linked to soldiers from the English Civil Wars. And there's a cool story linked to this. It doesn't begin here, but it ends here. In the 90s, there were several people that reported seeing this ghostly cavalier, so like a guy on horseback riding down East Street and just going all the way down the street until he gets to the front of the old siege house, and then it disappeared.
Whoa.
That only happened once, though, but it's wild.
Yeah.
And then so I'm going to be talking about Colchester Castle, like I said, but there's buildings that are right nearby. One is Holly Trees Museum and one is the East Lodge. And they're really close to the castle, but they're both haunted by the same, what's thought to be the same, it's a white lady ghost. She's believed to be the spirit of Anne Lyle. Anne Lyle has a portrait that is actually in the Holly Trees Museum, but her ghost apparently haunts both of these buildings. And there's some people, and people always say this shit, but there's some people that said when they've looked at the portrait of her, they get this strange feeling that something's behind them watching them. But, that could just be attributed to the fact that there's a ghost story that centers around this place,
Right.
But the East Lodge also has a second ghost known as the Gray Lady. And whenever she shows up, there's also the sound of the smell of an old-fashioned flowery perfume. And visitors will also hear running footsteps coming from one of the rooms of the museum, like something rushing towards them, but there's nothing there. And there's also been reports of piano music being played, but there's absolutely no pianos in that building.
Whoa.
So, yeah, I love the stories that have like the phantom music or phantom singing or stuff like that. It's so fucking cool, man.
Yeah. Oh man, that's I've had a lot of weird and unexplainable experiences, but with music, that I haven't had anything like that. But to be somewhere and hear something, music or sound related, that's definitely not supposed to be there. That has to be.
Yeah, little. I mean, it would be unnerving, but also, I don't know. Like I remember hearing the stories of the Amityville Horror, and to me, one of the creepiest things about that story was the phantom marching band music. Like in my head, because it was supposed to be a demonic possession of the house, and that was the creepiest thing to me. Like, why would a demon make it sound like there was a marching band? Like, why? That's so scary.
Yeah, that is bizarre. Just to cause disruption and anxiety. That's what they live for.
Yeah. And then because I first heard about the story when I was a little kid. I've mentioned before, I was raised in a strict Catholic family, and I remember my parents telling me the story about it, and it was being told to me as if it was, like a real true story.
Right.
And, I mean, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not it's true or not. And I believe we've had that debate on the show before.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
And back then, I think it was real acceptable to believe that story was true. I mean, it was the Warrens investigated. I mean, it was
right.
One of those cases where it was thoroughly looked at and inconclusive, I guess, at best.
Yeah. Right. Because, I mean, how are you going to prove that stuff? It's you're getting a report on it, and then some guy wrote a book on it. But I remember hearing about that as a kid, and for the longest time when I would go to sleep at night, I would lay there and I would just think about how freaked out I would be if all of a sudden I heard marching band music in my house.
Yeah,
like
dude.
I'm just laying there at night and then all of a sudden marching band in the middle of my fucking living room.
Well, that's one thing that scared the shit out of me about the Buffalo Ranch stuff, is to hear like blasting music outside. Like even if it was a person that pulled up in a car with really loud speakers, why would that be happening? That's
that they clearly want you to know that they are there, and that's fucking creepy in and of itself.
Yeah, and to have it last for hours, like
right.
God,
no, thank you. But back on track, getting back to this castle. Yeah, that's what we do. It's what we do.
Reeling it in, Mike. Good job.
Yeah. I identified it, cast it, pulled it back in. We're here. We're back to the castle. So, as I mentioned, the site where the castle itself was built upon the foundation of the Roman temple, and it was built in the year 1101 under the order of William the Conqueror, and he paid Gundulf of Rochester, not Gandalf, but Gundulf of Rochester, who was a master architect of the time, and he commissioned him to build this castle on the site of the old temple. So this castle is so old, this actually predates the Tower of London, and the blueprints for this castle were used as inspiration in the construction of the Tower of London. So we're talking pretty fucking old, man.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And the whole purpose for the castle being built was to protect this area from raiding Scandinavians, but also to, I mean, let's be honest, to assert royal power over the surrounding area. They had to assert their authority.
Yeah.
That's what they did. But shortly after being built, the care was given to the nobleman. I think it's pronounced Udo Dapifer, which that sounds like a character from Lord of the Rings, doesn't it? Udo Dapifer.
Well, it does, or like an evil baron.
Yeah, I am Udo Dapifer. Yeah, but he was faithful noble to the royal family, and as a reward for his faithful service, he was granted care of the castle. After he died, the castle reverted back to royal ownership, and at that point it became the headquarters for the High Sheriff of Essex, and eventually it ended up becoming a prison, basically. But it was involved, I mentioned earlier, it was involved in the civil wars in Great Britain, or I guess it was just Britain at the time. But in 1216, it was involved in the First Barons' War, which was thought to be the first civil war, where it was attacked by King John's forces and taken, and it was used as part of the peace treaty to end the war. After that, it was a prison again, and it was housing hundreds of POWs as well as local criminals. And then during the Second Civil War in the mid-1640s, Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General, was using this place to basically imprison and quote-unquote humanely torture accused witches.
Humanely torture.
Yeah, I'll get into his shit later, but so it was basically this was where he would take these women that he found to be guilty of witchery and try to extract confessions from them. And then after he retired in 1647, but then in 1648 the castle was linked with the end of the Second Civil War, where the royalist leader, Sir George Lisle, and the royalist commander, Sir Charles Lucas, were both beheaded on the grounds of the castle. And today, in modern times, there's an obelisk that was built right on the spot where that execution took place, but no grass will grow in the area surrounding the obelisk.
Whoa.
Yeah. But so, I mean, it's got a really bloody history, but eventually it was purchased by the Council of Colchester and turned into a museum, which is what it is today. So anybody can go there and check out the museum and see if you get spooked by ghosts. But apparently the ghosts that haunt there seem to originate from the dungeon. Due to the violent history of the castle, it's thought that most of the ghosts that haunt it are victims who suffered within the walls of the castle itself, or, came to violence in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Due to all the, the wars and whatnots. But there's a local legend, and I haven't been able to find the name of the guy, so that's what makes me believe it's like an urban legend in the area. But the legend has it that in the 1930s, there was a local man who was offered £200 to spend the night in the castle. And if he made it all the way till morning, he'd be able to get £200.
Sounds like a movie I've seen.
Yeah, right? So, any number of stories and movies. But so he goes in there at 8 p.m. and by 10 p.m. he was said to be on the roof waving his arms, begging for passerbys to help him. And he was sedated and taken to Severall's Hospital. And then he was said to be basically like he had lost his mind. And within a few months of this event happening, he was declared dead. He had died.
Oh.
Yeah. So is that a coincidence? I think it's more urban legend, personally, but that's just me. But this place, there actually, I mentioned earlier, there's not many places that have Roman soldier ghosts, but this place does. I mentioned it's built on top of the foundation of the temple, and part of the basement has Roman vaulted ceilings that were left behind with the temple foundation. And in this area in particular, visitors have reported seeing a Roman soldier, like walking through, or what looks like an apparition wearing Roman soldiers' gear.
Huh.
Yeah, but it only seems to be this area, I guess, where he shows up. So it must be something linked to the fact that it's got the ceilings and the foundation left intact. Maybe.
Yeah, I wonder if it stays there by choice because it's familiar.
Maybe, or maybe it's more like one of those stone recording things where
Yeah.
he was a temple guard or something, and or maybe just a soldier at the temple, and he somehow, for whatever reason, his image got stuck in time, and he rolls up every now and again, just doing what he was doing. Then he goes on his way. I don't know. I wonder about this. A lot of the hauntings here, like how much of them are intelligent hauntings and how much are just kind of like these things frozen in time. Because I feel like with a place with a lot of suffering and stuff, like if somebody were to die and say get stuck there like a ghost that's anchored to the place, they died there, and as a result of the trauma, or whatever horror movie convention you want to use, but for whatever reason they're there. Or is it more because of the strong feelings that occurred there, like the energy, the emotional energy, the psychic energy, whatever, leaves an imprint from all the trauma that they had endured there. So then you're just seeing like an aspect of what's left behind, I guess, or maybe a recording of it. I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff like this. Like so one of the most famous ghosts there is known as the Quaker's ghost. And he's got a whole backstory. In 1656, there was this Quaker man named James Parnell who was praying at the Colchester Church. And he heard some sort of disturbance outside. It sounded like arguing or a fight. The details on that aren't exactly clear, but he went outside to investigate and was kind of dragged into this conflict. And somehow things escalated, and all of the blame got put on James Parnell, which seems out of character because Quakers are typically perceived as being pacifists, at least at that point in time. I honestly don't know a whole lot about Quakers, so I can't really speak on that, but it was apparently thought to be out of character for him, but for some reason he was blamed for the event, and because it took place on church grounds, he was also being charged for blasphemy.
Oh.
Yeah, so double whammy. But as a fine, he was ordered to pay £40, and if he paid the £40, he would stay out of jail. But at the time, he maintained that he was innocent and refused to pay the fine. Due to this refusal, he was sentenced to the dungeons of Colchester Castle.
Yikes.
Yeah, and at the time, the dungeons were notorious for the poor treatment of their prisoners. The guards would regularly engage in torturing as well as just basically tormenting the prisoners. One of the games that they would make the prisoners play is they would withhold food from the prisoners unless they climbed a rope for it. Oh. And they would have like a little like alcove or whatever in the side of the wall, and they would put the food there, and the prisoner would have to climb this rope and get to the top of the rope and then grab the food and then go back down. And the story goes that once James Parnell was brought in, the guard immediately started in on him, and he was told that basically if he wanted to eat, he'd have to climb a rope, and so he was doing that. And at one time while he was trying to climb this rope, he fell from the rope when he was near the top and became seriously injured. Obviously, in a place like this, the welfare of the prisoners is not exactly a priority, so as a result, he succumbed to his injuries and passed away.
Oh.
He was then buried in an unmarked grave somewhere on the property, and that was the last anyone heard of James Parnell, in living form, that is. Because now he is said to have occasionally appeared and begs for food and mercy and wanders the castle. And there's also been reports of moaning and wailing in anguish that can be heard with no discernible source of where it came from. And that's attributed to James Parnell searching for food and some kindness. Poor guy.
Wow, what a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a shitty... A lot of these dungeons back then, and just to be clear, at this time, torture was unlawful in England. It wasn't something that was practiced. Or you know, like, and by torture, things like the rack or the brazen bull, like shit like that. But doing something like this wasn't exactly considered torture. That's why I said earlier humane torture, because there's still things you can do that will torture a person that wasn't really considered torture.
Right, like make them work for their food.
Yeah, and the Witchfinder General, the shit that he would do. So, I mean, I mentioned that he was bringing them here, and this was during the Second Civil War. He was bringing women into... he was most active from 1644 to 1647. And like he made it his mission to purge witches from the land. And he's such a douchebag. He gave himself the moniker Witchfinder General. That's a made up name that he gave himself because he's that much of a douchebag.
I was going to ask him, how do you get a handle like that?
Yeah, no, he made it up. He's like, I'm the Witchfinder General. That's me. Yep. Like I picture him being that fucking dickhead cowboy in the cowboy movies, that he's like the badass bounty hunter, but like only in his own mind. Like he comes, yeah, that's right, I'm Black Bart. And everyone looks at him. He thinks they're all afraid. And then, who? Black Bart, you know. Black Bart killed Sally the other day. Sally's dead? Oh my God. Yeah, nobody knows who the fuck Black Bart is. And probably didn't know who he was until he rolls into their village and starts fucking hunting for witches.
Right. Well, you hear that title, and I'm sure everybody's like, well, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But so it was unlawful to torture. So he couldn't torture confessions out of women like they could in the good old days. So he would use non-traditional methods to extract a confession. He would deprive these women of sleep. He would force them to stand for hours without any relief. Like you have to just stand. You cannot sit. You cannot change. You will stand. And he would do fucking real douchey things like cut their arms with a dull knife. And if they didn't bleed, then they were a witch. Or he would do the swimming test where he would tie an accused woman to a chair and throw the chair into the water. If the chair floated, she was a witch. If it sank, she was not a witch.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So all this shit that he would do, he even would travel whenever he'd go on these witch hunting missions. He would travel with this group of women that were known as witch prickers. And what they would do is they would perform pricking on the women, on the accused. And what this was doing was they're trying to identify the devil's mark. And it was something that all witches were thought to have. And it was this mark on their body that was supposed to be dead to all feeling, and it wouldn't bleed if you poked it or cut it. But it was also the area that they would feed their familiar from. And like apparently the familiar would be able to suck blood from it if they had this. A lot of times it would be something like a mole or a birthmark or like a third nipple or some sort of skin blemish. But if they couldn't find any one of those, then it was invisible. This witch has an invisible devil's mark. She's extra witchy. So the witch prickers would come in and they would start poking the women's skin with these special needles or small sharp knives after they had completely shaved all the hair from the accused woman's body.
What the hell?
Yeah, this was the fucking... This was how they dealt with witches. You can't be a witch. It's not right. God does not like witches, and the Witchfinder General, if God's not down with you, he's not down with you either. So, sorry. Sucks to be you guys, I guess. But he would bring them to the dungeons and make them do, all this fucking shit. And a lot of times they would die from malnutrition or injuries that they suffered while in detention. I think I saw something like around 200 women died through this time period as a result of being imprisoned here.
Just by this dude alone?
Yeah, and it's not like he was the one killing them, but it was more the conditions that they were left in that killed them. But now, as a result of all these murders and everything, visitors that come in have reported seeing spectral forms of battered women, just kind of slowly walking the halls, as well as distant screaming and crying. And I don't know if this is tied to these type of events at all, but there's also been reports of a ghost of a headless nun that has been seen around the old chapel site on the castle grounds.
A headless nun? Holy shit.
And there's been reports of ghostly singing that's supposed to be attributed to this headless nun. Now, how do you sing without a head? Fucking ghost magic, man. Or maybe she was a witch. Maybe she's a witchy nun.
Ooh.
Yeah. And she's like the secret that the Witchfinder General wanted to hide from history. And now she walks the halls, singing with no head. Help me. But yeah, it's I know lots of places in England are there's a lot of places that, and like London, it's another one of those places where it's like, every third building is haunted there or something. But I think it has to do with age too, like this has been a place for over 2,000 years now. You've got 2,000 years of civilized history here. We're not talking like hunter-gatherer, like the fucking Roman Empire built a temple here over 2,000 years ago. So, there's a lot of history. A lot of people have crossed through here. There's been a lot of violence, obviously. And I think that when you have all those things combined, you're bound to have some psychic imprint left on the land. And I know earlier I said maybe it's cursed. I don't want to say that it's cursed. I don't think it's a curse, but I think when you have this much death and tragedy and just history and civilization right on this spot, you're bound to get a little of that on you, so to speak.
Yeah, if we're to consider all the ghost stories throughout history, and not like campfire ones, but things that have been studied and shit, it's all trauma-based events, right?
Yeah, you never hear about the kid who had the best birthday party ever and died of happiness, and now his happy ghost opens birthday presents every day and laughs and has a good time. Right. That never happens. It's the fucking kid who lost his mom and got hit by a bus, and now his spirit is forever looking for his mom. The tragic shit.
Right.
I want there to be a happy birthday ghost. There fucking should be.
Me too. Those were always cool stories on Unsolved Mysteries too, when someone was just coexisting with a ghost.
I can't believe there hasn't been like a movie or TV show like My Roommate the Ghost, like make it reality style, and it's just like a living person living with a ghost as their roommate, and the interactions and antics they would get up to. It'd make for a good comedy, I think.
Yeah, maybe for a couple of seasons only, but I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah, give it 3 seasons, and season 2 you can have introduce a new character, like a fucking demonic entity or something that's trying to come in, or I don't fucking know. And then 3rd season you figure out a way to end it all, and then you call it a day.
Yeah,
everybody laughs. You get fucking 26 episodes. It's fine.
They reveal that the ghost is Billy Zane.
Oh God, whatever happened to Billy Zane?
He's still doing it, man.
I just watched Demon Knight a couple weeks ago. Fuck, he is so good in that movie.
Yeah, I was just watching some stuff from that too. He's great.
Yeah, man. Like just every part of the character that he does, like from unhinged to seductive to jovial to friendly, like he just nailed it all. So fucking good.
Yeah, the world wasn't ready for you, Billy Zane.
No. You know what's funny? I saw recently, it was on Twitter, X, whatever. Someone was posting pictures of old celebrities without, or well, not old, just celebrities without facial hair. And they posted this old picture of Vincent Price when he was a young man, but took all his facial hair off. He looked a lot like Billy Zane.
Really?
Yeah, it's fucking like Billy Zane from fucking from Titanic.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. How the fuck did we get on the topic of Billy goddamn Zane?
It was probably my fault.
Talking about haunted castles, and now we're both fucking salivating over Billy Zane. That sexy motherfucker.
So with you said a few times that you suspect this case might have been local legend and local lore, and of course that type of thing exists in every city. Anytime people live together, that those types of stories fly around. But do you think it's easier in a place like this? I mean, do you think that people there have like almost like a free check to make up any story they want and it's going to be believed because there is so many actual hauntings that go on there?
I mean, I think it's with any of these things like Loch Ness, you're going to have people that are going to go, like tourists that are going to go there looking for shit, and they're going to see something, you know, it's inevitable. Like the people that go to Point Pleasant and still claim to have a Mothman sighting just because the Mothman was there at one point.
Right.
So I think you're going to have those people that are going to go to the museum or spend the night at one of these hotels or hostels, and they're going to hear something, and to them, that's a fucking ghostly experience. You know, maybe they hear distant singing, and that's evidence of a ghost on site, when really it's just some other lodger singing down the hall, and you can't hear their music. You just kind of hear the change in the pitch of their voice, so you're aware that it's singing, but you don't know where it's coming from. So it's got to be a ghost because you're in a haunted place, but really it's just a person. I don't know. And I also wonder like how much the hotel staff kind of plays into it as well. Like think about who works overnight at hotels typically. Usually it's some kid typically, and or just some bored dude who's got nothing going on, who's probably more interested in playing games on his phone or watching a movie or whatever than dealing with your bullshit. So when you come down and you're like, hey, the guy in the room above me is being super loud and pounding on the floor and making all sorts of noises, and I'm hearing squeaking and weird moans, and the guy's like, oh shit, that's one of the haunted rooms. We don't even rent that out to someone. And then they go back to the room and like, oh shit. Meanwhile, it's some couple banging in the bed above them, like really aggressively and loud. And dude behind the counter just didn't want to deal with it. He's like, it's a haunted place. Say it's haunted. Two birds with one stone, baby. You give them a cheap thrill and you don't have to fucking move. No, I don't think that's the case, like, across the board. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happened a time or two.
Me neither.
And especially for, like, the restaurants and the pubs, like, that could be used as marketing and draw people in.
Yeah.
It's weird. We've got, I talked about this place that's fairly local to me on the show before that I used to go to see shows, but it's also a bar and restaurant, the Beardsley Castle. And that used to be part of their promotion. Like right on their website, they had ghost stories posted, and like they even had pictures of like alleged ghostiness on site, like strange mist and stuff like that. And then they sold it, and the new owners deleted all of that shit. Like there's nothing on there talking about the haunted history of the place or any of the ghost stories or anything like that.
Oh wow, what a shame. I mean, like any youngster researching that stuff, they're not going to find, like, on an official capacity, the website for that place.
Yeah.
He's just going to pass it by. What a shame.
It was even on remember the show Haunted History on the History Channel?
Yeah.
It was on that show, and it even on their website it even said as seen on Haunted History.
Wow.
And yeah, there's no mention of that at all anymore.
Okay, so what do the new owners do with the place?
It's still a bar and restaurant, and they also do, like, you can rent it out for like events, like weddings or parties or whatever. And they used to have this old carriage house that they would do concerts in the summer, and they would do big bonfires and stuff. And sometimes they'd even allow people to camp there. But now the carriage house is all, like, there's signs on it, private property, don't enter, so you can't go near the carriage house anymore, and it's all boarded up and shit. So I don't know what the deal with the new owners is, but they don't do concerts there anymore either, and they're shying away from the haunted background of the place. And just, I mean, it's a beautiful location, so it's like it's an easy sell for like weddings and stuff. But I guess if they're looking for it to be like a wedding destination, you know, maybe you don't want to put that out to the general public, like, hey, have your wedding at the haunted castle.
Right. I mean, the fact that they try to have weddings, you know, rent the place out for that purpose is enough for me to believe or to accept, you know, that they're trying to bury that reputation. But
yeah,
that's still
it's
crappy.
too bad though.
Yeah. I mean, you lost a place to watch shows at. That sucks alone.
Yeah. It was a cool place too, because I've been in it once since the new owners took over, and it was for a wedding, and it's still really cool inside and outside. Like, the grounds are awesome, but yeah, it stinks that they changed things up. But what can you do?
It's a conspiracy to hold down the paranormal.
Yeah. No ghosts welcome here. I wonder if they got the place exorcised when they bought it.
Yeah, they just solved that problem. They're like, hey, look, it's not haunted.
Yeah. But it was so cool. Like on the website, they would literally have this whole page that was just ghost pictures. And it was, you know, it was like mostly orbs or like what looked like smoke in front of the camera, like that type of stuff. But it was just really cool that was front and center on the thing, like right at the top banner on the page, ghost stories, and you click on it, and there it is. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, folks. See you later. We don't have a clever line this time.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.